Hey everyone, I'm Dan from JazzComposersPresent.com, an online space where composers, musicians, and listeners come together to celebrate the music we love. I'm joined today by Vanessa Perica, award-winning composer, arranger, conductor, bandleader, and lecturer at the Melbourne University. Vanessa is here to show us how to integrate hooks into your compositions.
Thank you, Dan. It's great to be a part of Jazz Composers Present. Let's get straight into it. Over the years, I've come to learn that hooks can be an effective tool when composing and arranging. A hook is a broad term when it comes to music. It can mean different things to different people. It's not something I've set out to do when beginning to write something, but in hindsight, I can see that I've used them as a device to create continuity across a piece. I think it's especially helpful in large ensemble writing, but can be used in any instrumentation, even solo. It also gives the listener something to latch onto and hopefully helps to make a memorable impression. I've identified 3 ways you can think about implementing hooks. I'm sure there are many more, but these are the ones I've discovered in my music and what I'll talk you through. In my big band composition, Sparka Napoli, from my album Love is a Temporary Madness, I've used what I call a rhythmic hook to create a sense of momentum. Let's pull up an image of this figure now. The hook primarily lies in the guitar part as more of a background figure. Sometimes you might not even realize it's there when the orchestration gets dense. It also makes an appearance in the trombone section during solo backings. The idea was that this figure represents the Vespers buzzing around on the cobblestones in Napoli. This figure is not strictly adhered to in this form. It adapts across different time signatures and moves harmonically to sit appropriately on top of different chords. Let's have a listen to this hook in Sparka Napoli in action. Next up, I have more of a comping figure functioning as a hook. This can be found in another composition of mine titled Dance of the Zinfandels from the same album. Let's have a look at the hook in its simple form. Once again, this is found in the guitar as well as the right-hand piano, but later on can be found in the horns. It also often dictates the bass line. It has multiple uses in this chart, as well as being stated early as a comping figure. It functions as a drumming solo vamp, and also as a centerpiece behind a shout chorus with modulations, which we'll have a listen to shortly. It also appears with and without rhythm section with the horns laid over the top. I think it's quite effective when the walking bass line finally sits underneath this hook for the first time quite late in the piece. It feels almost like a release after the tension that hemiola provides. Let's have a listen to what I've called a comping hook in Dance of the Zinfandels. This is the drum solo over the vamp leading into the shout chorus. Next up, we have 2 hooks coexisting in the one chart. You can find an example of this in my composition, The Eye is the First Circle, from the album of the same name. Let's have a look at the 2 figures. These figures lie predominantly in the bass and piano parts. Once again, I've used one of these figures behind the drum solo, and these figures can be found in the trombones too. I think these 2 hooks help the chart to groove. The chart isn't a typical form and is fairly through composed, so it helps to give it a central theme that the listener can latch onto. Let's have a quick listen to an excerpt of my band playing these two hooks in The Eye is the First Circle. So the key takeaways for me are that hooks often have repetition within them. Be careful that you don't overdo it with how many times you reference the hook. Let it rest every now and then. You don't want the listener or musicians playing your chart to become sick of them. Slight variations can help with this. It'll help to keep the listener engaged and guessing. I do like to throw a slight curveball every now and then just to keep everyone on their toes. The hook might represent something in part of your storytelling. For instance, the Vespers I mentioned earlier on the cobblestones in Italy. Or it could be a character you're referencing, like an evil villain, for instance. You can use these hooks as a vamp behind drum solos or solos by any other instrument. Some other things to consider, perhaps putting the hook in different instrumentations to give alternate colours and variation. I suggest making it something that is easy to sing along to help ensure it remains easy to retain. A hook can feature in the foreground or background. For example, the rhythmic hook in Sparka Napoli is more of a background figure, whereas the other two examples I provided are more predominant or more centre stage. And importantly, and it almost goes without saying, that I encourage you to make it rhythmically interesting. These are just some simple devices I've often turned to in my composing and arranging toolkit, so to speak, over time. Perhaps it might unlock another angle in your writing. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Dan and Jazz Composers Present, for having me.
Thanks for watching today's mini lesson. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Drop any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos down below. To watch our full-length events and participate in live Q&As with our presenting artists, head to jazzcomposerspresent.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.